The fire is still alive. Barely. Red embers glow beneath ash, weak but stubborn. A man kneels beside it, blowing slowly, trying to wake the flame before the cold wins again. Outside, the world is silent. Snow covers everything, roofs, fields, paths that only yesterday led somewhere. The air feels heavy, sharp enough to hurt when breathed too deeply. Inside the house, everyone stays close. A child sleeps wrapped in wool. A woman pulls her cloak tighter, hands hidden beneath the fabric to keep feeling in her fingers. The walls creak softly as the wind presses against them. Morning has arrived. But warmth hasn't. In the Middle Ages, winter wasn't a season. It was a test. A test of food, fire, and patience. A test that lasted months, not days. People did not ask if winter would be hard, only whether they had prepared enough to survive it. Because once the ground froze, there were no second chances. Winter survival began long before the first snow. Autumn was a race against time. Fields were stripped clean, grain dried carefully, vegetables buried underground where frost could not reach, meat salted, smoked, packed away for weeks that hadn't arrived yet. Every decision mattered. Too little food meant hunger. Too much wasted effort meant exhaustion before winter even started. Families counted sacks of grain again and again, whispering quiet calculations. How long would it last? No one truly knew. Because winter could stretch longer than expected. Storms could block roads. Hunting could fail. And when the world outside turned white and silent, what you had stored was all you would have. The fire became the center of life. People cooked beside it, worked beside it, slept close enough to feel its weak warmth at night. Letting it die was dangerous. Relighting a fire in deep winter was not easy. Sparks were precious. Dry wood even more so. Children were taught to guard embers carefully, covering them so heat survived until morning. Smoke filled the room constantly, stinging eyes and darkening walls. But no one complained. Smoke meant warmth. Warmth meant life. Outside, the cold waited patiently, pressing against doors, creeping through cracks, reminding everyone that the line between comfort and suffering was thinner than a single wall. Winter was not only cold, it was dark. Days felt short, ending almost as soon as they began. By late afternoon, shadows stretched across the floor, and work slowed to a crawl. Light came from candles, expensive and limited, or from the fire itself, flickering against rough walls. People learned to live slowly. Needles moved through fabric near the flame. Tools were repaired. Stories were told to pass the hours. Silence filled the spaces between words. Darkness changed how time felt. Hours stretched longer. Thoughts grew heavier. The outside world disappeared behind black windows and frozen air. And sometimes, the hardest part of winter wasn't hunger or cold. It was waiting for the sun to return. Winter made everything quieter. Too quiet. Coughs sounded louder in the dark. A fever felt more frightening when snow blocked the roads and no help could arrive quickly. Cold air settled deep in the lungs, turning small sickness into something dangerous. People watched each other closely. A child sleeping too long, an elder who stopped eating. A breath that sounded heavier than yesterday. There were no easy cures. Herbs were boiled slowly. Clothes warmed near the fire. Prayers whispered late at night while the wind pressed against the walls. Sometimes the sick recover. Sometimes they didn't. And winter taught everyone the same lesson, that survival was never guaranteed, no matter how well you prepared. Food rarely disappeared all at once. It shrank. Bowls became smaller. Bread slices are thinner. Meat stretched into stews so everyone could taste a little without finishing too much. No one said it aloud, but everyone noticed. The storage jars looked emptier each week. People learned to eat slowly, to feel full even when they weren't. Parents pretended not to be hungry so children could take another bite. Outside, fields slept under ice. Nothing grew, nothing changed. Winter was a waiting game, and hunger waited patiently too. What kept people alive was not only food or fire, it was each other. Neighbors shared when they could. One household lent grain, another offered wood. Work that was impossible alone became manageable together, repairing a roof, carrying supplies, keeping watch during storms. Stories helped too. Old memories repeated by firelight reminded everyone that winter had ended before and would end again. Laughter sometimes appeared unexpectedly, soft but real, breaking the heaviness of the dark. Because in the coldest months, hope was a resource just as important as bread. And hope survived best when shared. By midwinter, time lost its shape. One day looked like the next. Gray light, cold air. The same routines repeated without change. People stopped counting weeks and started measuring life by smaller things. How much wood was left. How full the grain sack felt when lifted. How long the fire stayed alive before needing more fuel. Outside, the landscape barely moved. Snow covered tracks almost as soon as they appeared, erasing signs that anyone had passed at all. Inside, patience became work of its own. People learned to endure stillness, to accept that progress meant simply making it through another day. And sometimes, that felt harder than any labor done in summer fields. Then, almost unnoticed, something shifted. Light lingered a little longer in the afternoon. Snow softened at the edges. Water dripped slowly from roofs during the warmest part of the day. No one trusted it at first. Winter often returned suddenly, harsher than before, but people watched carefully, quietly hopeful. Animals grew restless. The air smelled different, less sharp, less heavy. It was not spring yet, but it was the promise of spring. And after months of cold and darkness, even a small promise felt powerful. When the worst had passed, people looked around and counted what remained. Some food was gone. Some tools were worn thinner. Some faces were missing from the table. But life continued. Winter taught patience, preparation, the importance of sharing warmth and work. It reminded people that survival was never individual. It belonged to the whole community. Every year the lesson repeated, and every year people endured again. Because they knew something simple, winter always came back. So they learned how to live with it. One morning, the air felt different. Not warm, not yet, but softer. Snow sank slightly underfoot. Water ran where ice had held firm for months. Doors opened wider. People stepped outside longer than they had in weeks. Winter is ending. The village looked unchanged at first glance, yet everyone felt older somehow, quieter, slower, carrying memories of long nights and careful choices. They had survived again, not because winter had been gentle, but because they had learned how to endure it together. The fire had been protected. Food had been stretched. Work had continued even when hope felt thin. And now, the fields waited. Soon the ground would open. Tools would return to the soil. Life would begin its cycle again, as it always did. But winter left something behind. A reminder that comfort was fragile, that warmth was precious, that survival was built from small acts repeated every day, sharing bread, keeping the fire alive, staying close when the dark felt endless. Today, winter is something we watch through windows. For them, it was something they faced. And every spring that followed was not just a season. It was proof that endurance had won once more.